Hey everyone, thank you for having me. Thank you, EDCON, for inviting me. Um, it's another online conference, but I'm happy to be here. One day we will all meet in person again. Um, cool. I'm Danny Ryan. I work with the Ethereum Foundation on the research team. I do some research, do a lot of spec writing, and do a lot of coordination around the project formerly called ETH2. Um, that is more recently called Major Consensus Upgrades for Ethereum. And the next big one is the merge. So I want to talk to you about the merge today. It's a relatively short talk. We only had about 15 minutes. So I decided to keep it at a high level and bring you on a journey through math and diagrams. And the math is, well, it's not complex math. It's not really even math at all. And the diagrams are simple because the merge actually is simple. And I want people to be able to get a good intuition for what the merge holds, how that process goes from a high level, and actually how it will affect them as end users, which it shouldn't at all. You should just be in a more sustainable and secure home after it, which is cool. Okay, so let's look at some math. Okay, I gave a talk September of last year called ETH1 plus ETH2 equals Ethereum. When I looked that up, I could not believe that it had been pretty much a year since that talk. A lot has happened, but it's also been kind of a wild year. Time has moved strangely, for me at least, maybe for you as well. So we had the great renaming recently, where we killed the terms ETH1 and ETH2, or at least are attempting to. These terms are a bit of misnomers and don't allow you to get a really good intuition for what's going on here, and actually kind of imply that one's being deprecated for the other, when really it's like the amalgamation of two things. And so I gave a talk about that about a year ago, still relevant. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but we're killing these terms. And so I can't believe I even put them on the slide. But ETH1 plus ETH2 equals Ethereum. And what do I mean by that? I really mean that Ethereum is composed of two things: the execution layer and the consensus layer. And what do I mean by that? Really, we have like the cradle of consensus that drives this thing, the crypto economic consensus, proof of work or proof of stake. And then the execution layer, the EVM, the state, the transactions, all the goodies that users and applications care about. And really the summation of these two things, the consensus giving meaning and driving the execution layer, is Ethereum. So let's think about another truism. ETH today plus the merge equals ETH tomorrow. So we have Ethereum today. We're going to go through this process called the merge. That's probably the major next upgrade coming, and then we'll be at ETH tomorrow. So what is the merge? The merge is the subtraction of proof of work and the addition of proof of stake. Simple enough. So ETH today minus proof of work plus proof of stake is ETH tomorrow. What is ETH today? ETH today is the execution layer that we all know and love, plus a consensus layer. That consensus layer currently is proof of work. So we can do some simple mathematical substitution. The execution layer of today plus proof of work plus the merge, which remember was minus proof of work plus proof of stake, is Ethereum of tomorrow. So as we all know from math, plus proof of work minus proof of work equals 0. So we can just subtract it out. Cancel it out, as they say. So what are we left with? The execution layer plus proof of stake equals Ethereum of tomorrow. That's pretty much the same slide. Again, must be very important. The execution layer plus proof of stake equals Ethereum. Actually, is a different slide because ETH tomorrow is Ethereum. Wow, that's substitution magic right there. Execution layer plus proof of stake equals Ethereum. So the execution layer plus the future consensus layer, which is proof of stake, which is the beacon chain, is Ethereum. Yeah, not really math, but the point being there is we have Ethereum. It really is the execution layer that we care about, that users care about, that interact with, that state, that the contracts, the applications, the transactions, and that through this merge process of mathematical manipulation of symbols here is stable. It came with us the whole way. And it's really this consensus layer that we're swapping out. And the users just get to be along for the ride. And their execution layer remains stable, which is really, really nice. So now we get into some diagrams. Let's see. Ethereum after the merge. This is what it looks like. That's it. It looks like a blockchain. It feels like a blockchain. And these first two blocks could be pre-merge, and these next blocks could be post-merge. And from the user's perspective, that's it. You know, the execution layer rides along and just ripples through this merge. And so the applications on the before and after continue, and it just looks like a blockchain. I'm being a bit facetious, but actually from the user perspective, this is what the experience should be like, a blockchain. We can drill in a bit into it. So again, we're after the merge. This is what it looks like after the merge. We have the consensus layer, which is provided by the Beacon chain, which is in production since December of last year. It's been a good ride. And the execution layer, the primary thing that people are going to think about are transactions and state, is in that cradle. It's embedded in there. So the consensus layer gives us, the cradle gives us the home for the execution layer of Ethereum. We can drill down a bit more and take a deeper look at it, at the constituent parts. And the nice thing is we have this execution layer, which has the parent hash, it has the state root, has the base fee. Everyone loves burning ETH. And then we have the transactions. So this is a block. You got the payload. You got all the things that the users care about in this execution layer. And then we move to the outer layer, the consensus layer, really the core of the Beacon chain. And we have all these other fields. So we have, these fields are more about just keeping Ethereum consensus going, all the processing and messages that validators are signaling about how to construct this consensus and keep it secure, to keep this execution layer secure. So we have the slot, the parent root, the state root, the Beacon state root. So that has like the validator balances and information about finality. This signature, this is the proposer signature. So when a proposer creates this block, they wrap it up, they package it all up, and instead of doing a proof of work on the block, they create a BLS signature. It's actually pretty big. It's 96 bytes. So that's why it's really long. RANDAO, they inject some randomness into the protocol. They get a little bit of graffiti space so they can tag it with 32 bytes, whatever they want, and deposit root so that they can induct new validators into the system. And then kind of like how we have transactions in the execution layer, we have these validator operations. And these are more restricted messages than transactions. There's no like arbitrary virtual machine, but they do still sign messages about things that they want to do with respect to the Beacon chain. That primary one is attestations. Really, it's a validator has a role, and given the state of the system as they see it and their role, they create a message that says this is reality as I see it. And that helps with the fork choice. This helps with finality. This will help with bringing on shards when that comes. And so these attestations are really the primary consensus forming messages. Deposits, when new validators want to join, they sign these deposits and come in. Exits, when I'm ready to get out of here, I've had fun, I need to get my 32 ETH back out and maybe some nice rewards, I send an exit. So these are the primary operations. There's actually a couple more, and those are for slashings. I didn't include them because most blocks don't have them. And in the future, kind of how you extend functionality is you add more validator operations and more associated duties. So this is Ethereum after the merge. You know, you have this nice Beacon chain cradle out here, and we have the execution layer. This is where all the users hang out. And this next slide is only subtly different. Is this execution layer? So we have this parent root in the consensus layer, this hash reference. This forms this chain right here. But we actually, the execution layer is so much the same as it is today in proof of work, is that this parent hash, there's actually a chain still being formed in this execution layer. So like not only are all of the contents the same, other than the proof of work seal and a couple of deprecated fields, but even this execution layer still forms a chain. And this means that by keeping all of these fields stable and even still forming a chain, all of the Web3 libraries, APIs, user-facing things do not have to change at all. Unless you're like doing some proof of work stuff and you care about difficulty or other things like that, your libraries just remain totally stable through this merge. And so I just wanted to point out that there's this kind of like you have this meta consensus chain. You actually still retain this like execution layer chain embedded in this thing. So here's another diagram. I pulled this subchain out so we can just look at it. So again, this is Ethereum after the merge. It's the execution layer. It actually even still forms its own chain. And the nice thing is this is literally exactly the same thing that was in the proof of work chain today. It's just migrated into this beacon chain consensus. So actually we can go look at it, what it looks like inside of proof of work. So here's the execution layer. This is Ethereum of today in the proof of work consensus. And it has this kind of outer, we can call it like proof of work seal. And that's just finding the correct proof of work rather than doing that proposer signature that I showed you with the beacon chain. But this execution layer is nicely just, it's over here in the beacon chain consensus. It's over here independently. It's over here in the proof of work. And it still forms this kind of this chain. This has this proof of work seal on it. That's the crypto economic consensus driving it Ethereum today. And here is the consensus layer, the beacon chain of today, the proof of stake that was launched last year in December. And this is really what it looks like. It's kind of funny. Like it has all of these messages, it forms consensus, and then it's like, but what is it forming consensus on? Well, it's forming consensus on itself. But then it has essentially, we can slot things into the beacon chain. It is a consensus mechanism, right? Like all of this forms a crypto economic consensus mechanism formed of validators. And then we have this blank space. What do we want to come to consensus on? Right now, it's just coming to consensus on itself. It's live. It's working on itself. But after the merge, we get to put stuff in here. And with sharding, we get to put stuff in there. And so again, what does it look after the merge? It's just a chain. That's what it's going to feel like to end users. We can drill in. It's that consensus layer filling in that gap. Remember that gap here? And here we are, consensus, the execution layer. So what does Ethereum today look like? I showed you the constituent parts. It's really two chains operating in parallel. This was a design decision made because the beacon chain is quite a sophisticated piece of infrastructure. And Ethereum is quite the ecosystem and technology live today. So it was architected independently and actually launched independently. So we have the proof of work coming to consensus on the execution layer. We have the beacon chain coming to consensus on itself, waiting to come to consensus on, eager to come to consensus on other stuff, but just operating in parallel. This is Ethereum. It really is it's two things operating in parallel, waiting anxiously to come together. And this is what the merge looks like. It's actually not so complicated. In this diagram, I probably make it look even simpler than it is, but it's really not that complex of an operation. It's really running a piece of software that is aware of the beacon chain and it's aware of the proof of work chain. And upon some condition, it stops listening to the proof of work miners and instead listens to when the validators take over, this execution layer starts listening to those validators for the execution layer. And we can follow, I've been saying over and over again, this execution layer is hanging out in proof of work, hanging out in proof of work. The beacon chain is ready. It's coming to consensus, but it hasn't really, hasn't come to consensus on the execution layer yet. It has just the slot ready to go. And then at this point, the validators, and this transition is hinged upon a terminal total difficulty. So once this gets to a certain total difficulty, the validators just take over. They say, okay, that was the end of proof of work. This execution layer now is being slotted into our consensus, and now we'll continue forward. And that's it. I mean, we have this consensus mechanism. It is live. It is ready. And look at this, all this roomy space to shove stuff into. And at some point, our software will stop listening to proof of work and will start listening to proof of stake. And this execution layer is just continuous. And really, like this is what the users care about. And that, from their perspective, is totally uninterrupted. And so we're doing this in a live setting, and we're doing it soon. So that's the actual merge. And again, this is Ethereum after the merge. Really, to end users, that's that chain just being continuous. Simple. And then I just want to show you sharding. Sharding essentially is taking that consensus layer, finding a little bit more space in it, and shoving more stuff into it. And it is primed. I mean, the way that sharding requires many validators to be randomly sampled across different domains. And the way we're doing attestations and the way we're doing shuffling and the way that we're doing validators inside of the speaking chain is such that they are primed and ready to deliver additional data in their attestations about various shards. And the idea is that a beacon block, after the addition of sharding, comes to consensus on that execution layer that we know and love, and also comes to consensus on a sharded data layer. Coming to consensus on these roots that are known to be valid and available. And those will then be leveraged by the execution layer for massive scale through rollups. So here we go, Ethereum, merge, execution layer, and then sometime in the future, just add these shards. What does a post-merge client look like? We get to reuse a lot of the same software. We get a beacon node, which is live today. We get an execution engine. Think about it, Geth. It's like Geth or Nethermind minus the proof of work plus the proof of stake, or minus the proof of work listening to this proof of stake. They both have their own P2P stuff. And they have these beacon APIs and user APIs. So these are all the APIs that we know and love, web3.eth, all that kind of stuff. Beacon APIs tell us about validators and finality and that kind of stuff. And we just get to use both independently. The interesting thing is this potentially brings up some UX issues. It's very nice from an architecture standpoint, but Web3 libraries to the rescue. We just namespace it, wrap it under the same library, and call it a day. So Web3 ETH remains very stable through the merge. Web3 Beacon extends our information about the proof of stake consensus. That's it. I think I'm running low on time, so I do have one more thing. I've taken all these diagrams and I've put them on OpenSea into a project, into a collection, and it's called When Merge. And you can own diagrams for today's talk while supporting the merge. All proceeds will go to research and developers. It's going to whenmerge.eth. This is just an experiment. If you want to help support the incentivization of public goods and support the people that work their asses off to get this done, go buy your favorite diagram. Cool. I really thank you so much, EDCON, for having me. I hope this was interesting, this journey through diagrams and fake math. And again, if you want to support the merge and you liked some of those diagrams and want to put them on your metaverse art wall, check it out. Thank you.